Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Ballet, Anastasia, a round table with the creative team. My name is Hanna Mae Cruddas. I'm a principal dancer with Canada's Ballet Jörgen, and I've been dancing with the company for 11 years. Anastasia holds a very special place in my heart. When I was 14 years old, I actually got to dance as a local participant in one of the performances, the world premiere, and then flash forward 10 years, and I was dancing the role of Anastasia for the very first time as my first principal role. So I'm very, very happy to be here moderating this live stream with you today. Before we get started, thank you all so much for joining us as we really delve into what goes into the making of a ballet production. I'll introduce the panel in just a moment, but we just want to remind everyone that Anastasia will be premiering on Stingray Classica on August 19th at 9 p.m. your local time. And if you don't have a Stingray subscription, you can sign up for a free trial. We will put all the info in the comments for everybody to access throughout this. So we will be taking some questions from the audience at the end, so feel free to get them in the comments box, and we will try to answer them as many as possible, at least. And as well as answer some questions if we have some previously sent in from our social media. So let's get started. First of all, let's introduce BENGT Jorgen. He is our artistic director and CEO of Canada's Ballet Jörgen. He is a member of the Order of Canada, and he is the choreographer of our ballet, Anastasia. So welcome, BENGT. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next we have LEPAGE. LEPAGE is our costume and set designer, and she designed the costumes and sets for Anastasia. Thank you for being here, Sue.
Thank you.
And then we have HEINAR, and he is our drama and acting coach, and he was part of the stage direction, and he was the stage director for creating Anastasia as well. We also have, welcome HEINAR, sorry.
Hello, everyone.
We also have SANIYA, ABILMAJINEVA. She dances the title role of Anastasia in our production. Thank you so much for being here as well, SANIYA.
Hello. Thank you too for the invitation. Yes.
Of course. And we have Daniel De Silva. He's playing the role of Dimitri. He is a principal dancer with Canada's Ballet Jörgen, and he will also be Dimitri in the production that we see. So thank you for being here, Danielle, to share your experience with us.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
And finally, last but not least, we have CLEA IVESON, and she is our education manager, our principal character artist, and a concept and synopsis development member. So welcome, CLEA. Thank you so much for being here as well.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Hanna Mae.
So why don't we dive right into the questions? Our first question is for BENGT. So, BENGT, for those of us who are not familiar with the story of Anastasia, what is Anastasia about? Who is Anastasia, the character?
Anastasia is, of course, a real person. She was a real person, but she's also a mystery, an enigma, and obviously she's become a bit of a legend. She lived in a time and place that doesn't exist anymore, and so she has the mystique of something that happened a long time ago, but at the same time this mystery of what happened to her is still intriguing people, and it makes for a great story and a great ballet.
Yeah, it really is fascinating to be able to use the imagination as well as some fact, and it's such an incredible and touching story. So yeah, thank you. We basically follow her life story from kind of when things started going sideways for the royal family. SANIYA and Daniel, I'm going to ask you now to take us through your characters, introduce your characters, and what were they like to dance for your own selves?
So Dimitri is basically Anastasia's best friend, childhood best friend, that they kind of grew up together, but they follow a parallel path. She's still in the royal family, and he's in the workforce, and he's part of the revolution, and she's still with the royal family. So they're in different opposite sides, but they still really like each other, and then they in the end they love each other, and it's Dimitri is an interesting character that you see such a character growth, a development that's so interesting to play for a dancer and actor. It's so much fun rather than just a one note character. You get from childhood to adulthood to a little kid to a person of power that it's pretty much turns into, I don't know, I feel like he turns into a hero in the end, even though he's been on the wrong side of what Anastasia was. So
Yeah, you've spoken before about how you enjoy dancing this complex character. A lot of the time in ballets, the male dancer, the hero, if you will, is often kind of one-sided and is like a prince or someone who is kind of background to the ballerina. But in this performance, you're right. There's a lot of growth for this character.
Yeah, he's got different layers, and it's so cool to be able to play that, like a little kid and then a teenager being just in love and trying to discover love, and then actually like him opening his eyes to the real world and realizing, okay, there's this is stop, we need to stop playing, actually like try to find a better life for ourselves and for our families, kind of thing. So he fights for what he believes in, and yeah, but he's still like pretty much in love with the, let's say, the enemy, but not really, and so that's like that's what the struggle comes from, and then playing the struggle, that's very rewarding, playing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and who could resist this beautiful SANIYA here? SANIYA, if you want to tell us a little bit about your development of Anastasia and how what that character is to you.
Well, Anastasia, she is the youngest daughter of royal family of Romanov and Tsar of Nikolai II. She was the youngest one. She was the most, not the most loved one, but most of the, I think, most of the fun. She was the child who has most of the fun in her childhood, and she was. As we know from the story and from the first scene, she was a little tomboy. She likes to play around and play with the soldiers around as well. She didn't decide, oh, I'm just a princess and I'm going to play only with the dolls, only with girls wearing nice dresses. So she really, really enjoyed her childhood and was a regular child. She was running around the garden and like playing around with chatting with her nanny. Yeah, so she was such a regular girl, which I really like about that character at the beginning. So I really enjoy to actually not only dance on stage, but I really play around a lot, and that's one of the most fun part about it, about first scene when Anastasia is being a child. Anastasia, ballet of Anastasia also occupied a special place in my heart. It's very, very important ballet in my ballet career, and since it's a real story, it's a real person from the history, and since I was living in Russia, so I knew that story before I came to Canada very well, and it was also very special for me to dance the role of Anastasia. I could feel the pain of her loss of her family after everything was after the revolution was have done. And before I start actually to learn this ballet, the choreography of this ballet, I read it again, some articles, some books about the specific about this time in the history, 1980 years when revolution was done, and what exactly was happened and how was happened. It was really quick for the royal family, so they and it was such a big shock for them, and of course especially for kids. And in the second act, I think that was a moment at the beginning when the royal family is walking through the front stage, from their house to the priest. That's a little short walking, tells a lot. And in this short walking, I was trying to show as much as I can the shock and lost, and that Anastasia couldn't really believe it's happened to them, and maybe something will be better. So I really like this ballet because in very short period of time, we were able to show how Leo Princess become from a happy young child. She grew to a very real and strong young lady. And at the very end, when she hear her family, when she hears the gunshot of that family is died, she realized that last part there, it was it's very touchable music there, and also means a lot. Every time I want to cry on stage and hold myself very hardly to not start crying, because every time I feel this pain for real, how she could feel it.
Yes, so beautifully, so
yes,
beautifully said today.
Yeah, so pretty much that. I don't want to talk a lot, but yes, this very special ballet and role of Anastasia, one of my favorite role in my whole ballet career, I will say.
It's an incredible. I've watched you do this role a couple times now, and I was blown away by the rawness of your emotion, and and I think both you and Daniel touched on this, the humanity of both of these characters, and they're on opposite spectrums of the world, and they're very very connected and very human, and you both danced them so beautifully. Thank you for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
My next question is for BENGT and CLEA, or let's go with BENGT first. BENGT, a lot of people don't know what goes into creating a full-length ballet. Is there a way that you can summarize the creating of a ballet in a few words? Why don't you kind of explain some of the components that go into a production?
Sure. I mean, number one, you need time. Full-length ballet, to do it well, it requires a lot of preparation. And probably the first thing is what is the story? What's the key? And what do you want to do with that story? You can think of it as the intent of the story. You have to have a good story, something that makes you want to work with, and something that you think is going to be meaningful to people watching. Then the music. If you don't have good music, or music that you respond to and that you feel really can speak to this story, then it's really challenging. So, story and ideas and music, for me at least, come first. And then, of course, you need to put together a creative team that's going to work with you, the designs, and you have to develop, as well as you do that, you have to develop the actual synopsis. And that's, in our case here, it was myself and HEINAR and CLEA that worked on this synopsis, so that you have something to work with. It's like a storyboard. While you work with the designers and you bring them in and make sure that they also can contribute. And so it's a team effort. And then, of course, you need dancers, and you need to make sure that you have enough runway to work. In this case, it's an original score by Ivan Barbotin. So you also need a lot of time with the composer to develop the score and work with the synopsis and bring the designers in, and then a process where you work with the dancers and still continue to develop the music. And then you have to, when you finalize the music, you actually have to go into the final rehearsals and really create the work in its final form. And then, of course, you bring it to the stage. So in a nutshell, that's sort of it. But there are a lot of other things that go into it, not the least the fact that you have to raise the money to do the work and make sure you have the funding to get through that. And usually it takes many years from the original idea till when you get on stage with the work. Usually I would say 3 to 4 years is probably a good runway to do the work justice, so that you don't rush through any of the aspects.
Wow, that's amazing. CLEA, I will get to you in just a moment, but BENGT, you touched on the designers and the collaboration there. I wonder, Sue, if you could give us an idea of what goes into designing and building a set for a ballet. And because DBJ is a touring ballet company, how difficult is that, and how does it differ from, say, creating a set for a stationary show?
Oh, it's unique. I think Ballet Jörgen itself is unique. I've done touring shows for theater, but usually you have floor plans of the specific theaters you go to, and usually you have a scene-by-scene script, line by line. So this was a really new experience, and actually a really exciting one. The large and small contrasts that are in the story itself, the grandness of the imperial Russian court, and the intimacy of many of the scenes, and the contrasts are extreme. Well, the contrasts in the spaces where Ballet Jörgen goes, and the grandness of the stage, and the smallness of the truck, and the amount of work that the company puts into making all of that, those set elements and costume elements work, it's unique. And it was quite a shock to me when I first tried to figure it all out. It's a big puzzle where the pieces, of course, you don't know how it all fits, but it was a pleasure. And again, the pressure of bringing something in to something that can be efficient and yet can be as grand as BENGT's vision. Well, that's pretty special. So a wonderful experience.
It's very striking. The set is very striking. I remember as a young dancer, when I was a local participant, walking onto that stage and just admiring how well everything fit and how cool the scene changes were. And it was just a very, very very well put together show. So yeah, congratulations to you folks on the design team.
The scene changes and all those changes really become part of the show. They have to move and flow. It really is part of the dance. So again, it moves out of my hands into their hands and becomes something quite unique.
Well, the way you built it and then the way that BENGT worked with it, it's incredible. It's really, really neat. I have a question for BENGT about your choreographic process. So we just talked about how you were dealing with moving set pieces as well as dealing with moving dancers. Can you take us through your approach to choreography and what that process is like for you?
Yeah, in general, I'd say you can think of my choreographic process as a ping pong process. I like to work with the dancers and go back and forth, trying to always keep in mind what the purpose of the scene is, what the characters are, the intent of the work, and always being respectful of that, not just going, oh, that's a cool thing. I'd like to include that. It's always, does it communicate? Does it say what we want it to say? And how do these characters come alive? And working with the dancers so that, trying to really engage the whole team in a creative process, but constantly letting my eye simply pick the things that really shape the work the best possible way. I come up with some ideas, the dancers work them, and sometimes their work generates new ideas that go back to me, and I think about it, and we play back and forth. So it's like a ping pong between the dancers and myself, trying to constantly keep in mind what it is we're trying to accomplish, and then taking a look and seeing if we really are saying that. Sometimes we go off and we think it's really great, and we look at it and we realize we're talking about something a little different than what we actually tried to say. And the work itself, to me, is the supreme part. You have to sort of subordinate yourself to it, and it's a little bit like a child. It's always easy in the beginning, I find, and it starts taking shape, and then as it grows, it becomes sort of independent. And towards the end, it really dominates, and it basically tells us what we have to do in a certain sense. I mean, we obviously have some choices, but the work sort of becomes independent, and finally it stands on its own 2 feet, and that's when you feel that you've accomplished it. But many times it also happens you do first draft of something and it doesn't quite work, and even you've done a completed ballet and you realize there's some scenes that aren't, when you put them all together, working as well as you wanted, even though individually they work well, but when they put to other scenes, they're not necessarily supporting the other scenes the way we'd hope. You got to go back and redo it. So it's also a little bit of a ping pong with the work once it's finished. So it's a long process, but a really interesting and fun one, as long as you just stay open and respect the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's so interesting to be in the studio to build something from the start. And I know, CLEA, you were part of building that show, right? And so as a principal character artist, but at that time a full company dancer as well, what was that like for you to be a part of that creative process and to develop your role in the show with BENGT and with all of everything just coming up around you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're a dancer with Canada's Ballet Jörgen, you get to do lots of different things, and from different roles within the ballet, and also different roles in the backstage part of the ballet. So we're all learning our scene changes and pushing set pieces here and placing them here and there, and that's a hugely part of the process of making the ballet come together. But the chance to explore all of those characters, whether it's the peasants in Russia, whether it's the nurse as the sort of character counterpoint for Anastasia, and jumping into the court as a court dancer, you really do get to feel the growth from all the perspectives. And then you're a member of the Red Army, and you're out there, shaking weapons and chasing people down. And so you really get a taste of each element of the development of the whole piece by being in there and dancing all those different characters, which becomes your own ping pong when you dance the show, because you have to go from one character to another, and one costume to another, and one role to another. And we involve local dancers, as you mentioned at the beginning, Hanna Mae. You were part of that, and that's another role that I very connected to in terms of how much those local dancers can add to the show and make it even stronger. And developing their characters is equally as important, because every character that appears on stage is adding a layer to the show. So all those layers that you get a chance to have your hands in really helps bring the show to life and makes it constantly alive for you as the artist.
Absolutely. It's so neat to hear the insider perspective on that. We have a question from Dana on our YouTube, and she's asking Daniel and SANIYA, some of the scenes in the ballet are very emotional and dramatic, and to kind of continue with what we were talking about with CLEA just now, how did you bring out those intense feelings if you have like an 8-count kind of switch on stage? How do you bring those emotions to the forefront for your characters? Maybe let's start with SANIYA.
Yes, at the beginning it's not too hard, but it is hard actually, because every scene we are already much older. So, for example, first scene, let's say we are about like 7, 8 years old. Yes. And then second scene, it's already when revolution is start, and Anastasia about like 15, 16 years old. So she is already a teenager, and like I still have to be a young, happy woman, but to show to the audience that I'm much more mature right now, and I'm trying to be focus on the things that I'm doing, helping to the people like with the stuff with the medication stuff. It's like a scene happen in the garden, but still with my sister Tatiana, we are still teenage, and we are right now in age like when Tatiana, she's falling in love with one of the officer, and she's sharing with me that secret, and I have to show that I kind of like there, but not there yet. Yes, it's quite hard to be between young child and already a teenage, maternity, teenage, and it's very fun and interesting to think about it in a rehearsal process and then show it on stage. But later on, when in the second act specifically, when all scenes are coming much more harder, there's lots of cry and here. So if sometimes emotion took over of myself too much, so I just start focusing on okay, technically things. So because sometimes I had some difficult moments and technical stuff, like doing some contemporary movements, that was hard for me, and I will start focusing back on my technical work, and that's what brings me back to stage and stop myself pushing over my emotions. That's usually really helped me. Also, to communicate with my partner Daniel, he is very, very supportive on stage, and if something is happening, usually if he's seen something wrong, something unusual with me or something, he always like beside of me, he always support, and he like quietly can tell me nice kind words like, oh, everything is fine, don't worry, and he just like push me. That's also very, very helpful when your partner is understand you, feeling you, and can support and help you in the right moments.
Yeah,
so
the
yes, thanks
partnership
to
is-
Daniel, to my wonderful partner.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to him. He like helped me a lot on stage.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, this was
So
gonna say the it's easy to bring out emotions when you can react to something, specifically when you're doing a pas de deux, when you have a partner that you can actually play back and forth the questions and the answers. So it's really nice that that we have that. And one of our coaches, Svea Eklof, she one time when we first started dancing together, Sanya and I, she told us that you do when you're playing a character, um, a love interest, and then you have a love interest, you have to feel a little bit of affection for your partner. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to to truly show that you love the person on the character on stage. You know, so with Sana and I, we had like such a great relationship. With work, when one was frustrated, the other one was helping, and then it's back and forth. Like, okay, I'm gonna work a little bit more here, and then I'm gonna lead here, and then you follow, or she would lead and then I follow, and that's what really helps with the when the scenes are really intense,
yes,
right?
yeah.
Because then we can actually play back and forth. Then you can actually have this ground that that helps you bring the story to life. Because when you're by yourself, it's a lot harder because you're not reacting to anything.
You
You
can
know,
get
they
lost
react.
in it.
We can kind of get lost on your own head, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
when you're playing off something, someone, someone's reaction. It's easy for you to react to someone's reaction. So that's that back and forth is what makes the intense moments easier to portray.
And we spent many hours on rehearsals actually to work on the communication and in the acting scene a lot. Yes, that's also very, very helpful. Yes, when you are rehearsing in the studio for out many hours before you're going on stage.
Absolutely. And speaking of reacting, this is something that we talk about all the time when we are working on our theatricality. And so I would love to call HEINAR up to talk a little bit about what your process is like, and can you describe what it's like to work with dancers and to help facilitate that that dramatic aspect of performance? What was your process like? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. A lot of it has already been said by both Daniel and SANIYA, and I'm very glad that, or I hope that what they are saying and experiencing comes out of the work with me that I'm trying to instill them. I mean,
it does.
6 rules of acting: react, 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 listen, listen, listen. I mean, it's not that simple, but that's what it is. And I approach any ballet like I do a play or a musical or an opera. We're telling a story. And the story must be made crystal clear so that the audience can follow it, understand it, and be transported from one moment to the next, from one scene to the next. Again, what has already been hinted at by SANIYA and Daniel, if we watch a beautifully pas de deux, for instance, we're not only seeing 2 graceful bodies moving in exquisite harmony, we're watching a conversation. They are exchanging words, they're expressing feelings, desires, regrets, memories, whatever. And if the audience cannot follow that dialogue, the storytelling is interrupted and sometimes even stops altogether. And Anastasia it's an especially complex story to tell, and you know, the challenges put on the company, on the actors, are enormous. Just a quick example. Years ago, I saw a production of Swan Lake at the Vienna State Opera, choreographed by Rudolf Nureyev some 40 years ago, and the huge company of Vienna State Ballet, exquisite dancers, all bedazzling, one balletic highlight after the other, and I was bored to tears. Why? They totally ignored the story. It was lost, and I left an intermission. This must not happen in a story ballet, and it does not happen with Ballet Jörgen. Anastasia tells us a very rich and very complicated and complex story, taking the audience from youthful joy and exuberance, as SANIYA has explained, through you know, horrendous social upheaval to the, you know, terrible fate of the Romanovs. And our dancers are telling that story with great clarity and enthusiasm. I congratulate them.
Thank you, HEINAR. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we all feel it when we watch these 2 dance. We can definitely feel it. So thank you. And you answered another one of my questions: how important is acting to tell a story? And it is very, very important. Not even just acting, but the bringing about of the humanity of each character.
Just very quickly to that, want to add. Every dancer, for every moment on stage, I make sure they have the answers to the 5 W questions. Who am I? Where am I? When is it? What do I want? Why do I want it? And if any one answer to those questions is unclear or missing, the storytelling experience a hiccup. But that doesn't happen with us.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I want to actually ask BENGT something now. How do you choose your leads, BENGT? We've talked about the dancing aspect and the dramatic aspect, and kind of how do you put those things together, and how do you choose who you want to kind of lead the show?
Well, I know it sounds very pat, but they really chose themselves. The dancers kind of evolve over time. You know, carrying a lead role of this kind in any dance company is not easy. It takes a long time to develop the mental stamina, the physical stamina, the technique, you know, not to freak out on stage, being able to remember everything. You just heard SANIYA talk about the challenges sometimes, and you need to learn how to do this. And dancers evolve and they grow. And my job, I feel, is more to try to encourage everyone to grow in their own direction, and different works will be better danced by different types of dancers. But you know, my hope is that every dancer that walks through my doors at some day will be able to carry a lead role, and it may not be exactly, you know, one or the other role, but there will be some role that they will identify themselves as just being extremely suited to do. And with regards to SANIYA and Daniel, they've been with me for a very long time. And when we did Anastasia, they were very seasoned artists. And so at that point, there was no longer really an issue for me to choose. It's sort of, they just did it. And that's how I like to think of it, is that we work together, and over a period of time, you grow into these roles. I don't like to throw someone in the deep end and hope that they're going to swim. Like, this is a process. We talked about it in terms of the dramatics, the acting. You know, we haven't really talked about all the work technically that goes in. I mean, these are ballet dancers, and not only have they trained for a long time prior to joining the company, but then there's an endless daily routine, not just in class, but coaching and performing. And over a period of time, you grow into these roles, or you don't. Not everybody is actually happy to try to deal with all of the stresses of carrying a 2-hour ballet, because it's a lot of stress, a lot of mental stress. And I take my hat off to these dancers and all other principal dancers around the world that actually aspire and thrive and can manage this, because it's not easy. They make it look easy, but it isn't easy. And I think really people identify themselves, and it's my job to support that and try to just get them to the right place at the right time.
That's so interesting. Thank you for that. We have another question from our YouTube, from Dana. Again, this is a question for Sue. The colors in the costumes and sets are so rich and textured. How did you come up with the color palette? This is from Dana. Thank you, Dana.
The color palette reflects the story too. Some things are historical, the Red Army and its rough textures and obviously communist red colors. The richness of the ball scene and the Russian is based on old photographs and dresses in museums and all that sort of thing. And then you bring to that the freshness of the young characters and the individual distinctions. So really, again, it's just another kind of storytelling, and easy to find in a story so rich and full of contrasts. So, yeah.
It is really beautiful to see the gilded costumes in the ballroom scenes, and how even the fabrics are different. So when you're dealing with the royalty, they're in silks and satins and that sort of thing, and it's very light and very lush. And then when you're dealing with the workers and the red guards, the textures are so much more grainy and it's heavier. And it's really neat.
And weight is such an interesting thing in dance, because weight affects movement. I can still think of a couple of things where I think I got the weight of that particular little fabric on somebody's skirt wrong. But for the most part, even though those Russian ball gowns were incredibly heavy, like the real ones embroidered in metallic you can imagine how heavy they were. It was sari fabrics that gave us the lightness and the stamped on impression of all that embroidery. And then, of course, the heavy things, the peasants' things, in some ways you think, oh, well, you don't want heaviness for ballet, but boy, that stuff can move too. So you get the weight swinging and adding an extra muscle to the movement. So yeah, thinking about fabric, and thinking about fabric in motion is the best.
Yeah, I always enjoy moving in your costumes, because yeah, it is. I can, in a big circle skirt, it swirls out around you, or it just, yeah, you think of all those things very well. So thank you. I have a question for CLEA. We've been seeing some pictures come up as we've been talking, and this is a question about the education program, and you are the education manager for the local participant programs, and you touched on it earlier, but can you talk a little bit more about the local participants in Anastasia and how important and necessary they are for to have these roles in our production?
Yes, thank you, Hanna Mae. I mean, it is twofold in that those dancers, they add so much to the show. I mean, we have crowd scenes, and we hardly travel with a crowd, so we need to recruit our crowds. But it's not just any crowd; it has to be a part of the story. As HEINAR mentioned, those local dancers have to step in, and they have to fulfill their roles and their characters, and they have to add to the scene emotionally. And so whether they're cheering for the army or they're escaping as peasants, it's so important that they bring that life and that commitment to the stage. And I think for the dancers that participate, it brings new value to the work that a dancer does on stage, that goes beyond the work that they do in the studio, which of course is going to be about their training as dancers, and they're learning how to point their feet and stretch their knees and turn better and do all of those things, and they come and they perform with us, and we don't ask them necessarily to do any of those things, but we ask them to do something that is incredibly valuable to them. And I think that richness that they take away from the experience of learning, feeling, and understanding that, along with just the process of putting a ballet on stage with all the moving pieces and the moving people and the parts and how quickly it happens, parents and others are so just excited to learn and understand that process that it's like a mystery. And so I think that there's so many facets to what those young dancers experience and learn and walk away with. And many of them may have had the bug just planted for their future and where they want to be. Hanna Mae, I'll take a personal take on that one, and bringing you into the fold as the young Anastasia that we danced together back when you were 14. So it's enriching for us as their mentors in the process, as well as the dancers.
You are so right with planting that seed and the bug, as you say. It really, that was the turning point for me. Dancing with you folks on stage and even being backstage was the moment where I was like, this company in particular, but also this career, this is what I want to do. And being part of that and being part of putting on such an incredible production, it's so important for young people. And then as dancers as well, I got to dance the role of young Anastasia, and then I then worked with the young Anastasias many years later, and it's important for all of us dancers as well to be able to recognize that we're part of something it's not just a ballet performance, it's also an education as well. So thank you for instigating that and making it so much what it is, and so important and wonderful. So thank you. to touch on the world premiere, this premiered in 2007 when I was 14 in Nova Scotia, my hometown, and it went on tour then. So this is for BENGT or CLEA if you want to grab this as well, but this was the largest tour in CBJ's tour history at the time. And yeah, the company toured coast to coast. Can you tell us a little bit about how significant that was for the company? Like that was a big moment.
It was a great moment for us. We believe that ballet should be accessible, dance should be accessible to everyone, and no matter where you live. And obviously, you know, access is a big part of why we do what we do. We want to perform for many people in communities that don't necessarily have access. And this ballet helped us grow that mandate and really realize that even more. And you're right, it was the first actual tour. We've toured coast to coast before, but it's the first actual tour when we actually toured from one end of the country to the other. And we didn't fly anywhere. We just, you know, drove and performed and drove and performed. It was 9 weeks and then some additional stuff after that. And it sort of taught us a few things. A, it's great what we do, and never again are we going to do a 9-week tour driving with no stops. So
Wow.
It was tough on the dancers for sure. And Anastasia really, it was a stake in the ground for us. It was our first fully original, where we had our own score and our own story and all of that. And it really started a number of new works that we have developed, and particularly on Canadian themes now, most recently finishing off with Anna Green Gables, the ballet, which is an even bigger work than Anastasia, and an even bigger tour we did before COVID stopped us. So it really set in motion this process, and it really taught us that people love to see story ballets and they love to be engaged, and people that live in communities without a lot of access to classical ballet, it's a very important what we do for them and for us. And Anastasia really cemented that path for us. So it was a very seminal work in so many ways.
Thank you. Yeah, that kind of led into my other question of how has touring developed since then, and how have we now built into our new Dance for All mandate. And you just answered that so well. It really is, it's about accessibility, and it's about reaching all points. And yeah, so thank you. I speak for myself here, but as a dancer at the company, I feel very lucky to be able to be a part of such a wide-reaching and important company. So yeah, thank you for that. We have a few wonderful comments from people on our social media platforms, our YouTube and our Facebook. Right now we have one from Bruno David Silva Romero. He says, BENGT, you are an incredible coach. I can testify that for sure. Congratulations always. It is absolutely true. Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you, Bruno. Bruno was one of our dancers way back and made his mark, as all of our dancers do. They leave a mark and the company grows, and we appreciate that. And thank you, Bruno, for both the comments and the work you did when you were dancing for the company.
Thank you, Bruno, for paving the way for all of us. I am now going to kind of open up the floor. If any of our people on our social media platforms have any questions, we would be very, very happy to answer them. We've been answering some as we've gone along, but if there are any more, please do send them in. Thank you all so much for tuning in to be a part of this. It's been a real pleasure to hear all these perspectives from all of these important people in this production. So thank you. I will just kind of see if there's anything. We have a comment here saying, oh, where'd they go? They said basically, thank you for all that we do. And that one I could tell was from my father. So thank you, Dad, for doing that. Yeah, it's just been such a pleasure. I thank you, all of our wonderful panelists. If we don't have any more questions, I'd like to wrap up and just tell you, if you are interested in learning more, if you're kind of shy to ask questions now, we have a blog series, Behind the Ballet, on our website. So please do go and take a look at that. There are lots of different perspectives on there as well, and some of your questions may be answered there. So thank you all so much. Oh, and we have a thank you from, Lori. Just a massive thank you for allowing our local dancers to participate every year, or year after year, in your wonderful productions. We are so fortunate. We are fortunate. Emma, Emma has been a part of our programming for a very long time. So thank you, Lori, and thank you to Emma, our local dancer. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope that you enjoy our production of Anastasia on Stingray Classica, starting tomorrow, premiering tomorrow at 9 p.m. your local time. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.